Tonight on Localite, Tonia Farman tells the heartbreaking and heartwarming stories behind the founding for Athletes for Cancer. After losing her brother to leukemia, Tonia launched Kiteboarding for Cancer and has helped change the fates and lives of many people. That's all coming up on Localite.
So Tonia, thank you for coming in. It's really nice to finally meet you.
Thanks, Don.
And I want to learn all about Kiteboarding for Cancer and Athletes for Cancer. But before we get to that, let's start with how did you end up down here in the gorge? Because you're from Seattle,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did that happen?
I actually was working in Seattle, living my life, doing my business. I ran a design and marketing business up in Seattle, just freelance. And I had an opportunity to be a part of a kiteboarding company down here in marketing. And it was a good opportunity. It was a good friend that ran the company, and I decided to give it a shot. And I thought I would only be down here for maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And at that time, it's funny because I didn't like wind.
I read that yeah, you didn't even really like wind at all, and you didn't kiteboard. So I found it very interesting that now you're, like an instructor and putting on this big event and stuff. So keep going.
Yeah, I had no windsurfing background. I tried to windsurf up in Seattle and Green Lake, which, if you know Green Lake, it's basically a speck of water in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And it never caught on. I never just didn't like it. I struggled the whole time. So when I came down here, wind was just kind of a pain to deal with.
Nuisance.
And so when I joined Slingshot Kiteboarding, the kiteboarding company that I came down here to work for, and I was kind of forced to jump right in and learn the sport. And thankfully, my friend who had worked for, he took me out every single day in the fall, September, October, November, when conditions are not ideal. And I learned in not so ideal conditions, and started to like it. And then realized that, okay, this wind thing's not so bad. I can do something with it.
Yeah. So when was it that, because your brother, which we'll obviously be talking a lot about here in a bit, but your brother, did he ever come down to the gorge? And
he did, not immediately, but later on he did. Of course, that was in 2003 that I came down. And once he realized that this pretty cool place to come visit, he was in Seattle and then ultimately Olympia at the time, and so getting out of the city was kind of a great thing for him to do, and he'd come down and visit, and really liked to hang out down here.
Good. So. All right. So tell me then, how was it that when you found out that he was dealing with leukemia, and what that was like for you?
Well, at first, he was diagnosed in 2006, and at first you just kind of blow it off as if he's gonna get through it. And
he's a kid, he's young, because he was only 17, right? Or
yeah,
at the time when he was diagnosed.
And he's a strong kid, and I knew that he'd get through it. I just kind of had in my mind, this is just a little hiccup. And I would go up and see him, and he was going through his treatment, and it wasn't really a question of if he would get through it or not. It just when. Yeah, and I was very optimistic, and I didn't really know much about cancer, and didn't really think that there was a possibility that he wouldn't be able to make it. So you go through it, and you're there for him, and that's kind of all I could do, was just kind of be there and help him through it. But really, I just went about my daily life here, and then I'd go visit him on the weekends because he was up at Seattle Children's Hospital. So we make the trek up there on the weekends, and then as treatment would get a little more intense, sometimes I'd go and spend more time. So I'd take a Monday off and a Friday off and spend like 3 or 4 days, and then, they go through this treatment, and then around the 9th month, I knew that remission was a possibility. Hopefully, it was going to be sooner rather than later. And he had a date that he was going to be done with his treatment and then go about his life. So we're real excited to look forward to that date. And just,
right.
Okay, it's done. We can move on. He can go to college and live his life.
And was he doing the regular treatment, the sort of standard course of treatment when somebody gets diagnosed?
With
the chemo and all of that?
With that leukemia, yes. And things were pretty on track. Things looked good when he went into remission, which was in December of 2006. And then he applied for college and got accepted and went over to Boston College in Boston. Had to leave the Northwest and go explore the world. So he took off in January and went to Boston, and he was there for just about 6 weeks. And that's when he found a lump and had to get immediately flown back and to Seattle, and he was admitted into Children's right away. And
so how long from finding that out to him being nearly on his deathbed?
Yeah. The doctors knew right away that it was bad. And of course, in hindsight, when you look back, you know, everything's in 20/20 vision. And they knew, and they don't want to give you any false hope, but they don't want you to think that death is a possibility. It's amazing looking back and thinking how they were telling us what was going on with him, and then, you know, they don't want to give too much optimism, but also
they don't want to be
real
too negative
too.
Either. Yeah.
So they knew it was bad, and he was admitted in February, and then he passed away on June 5th. So it wasn't very long, and he was in the hospital the entire time. So at that point, we were waiting for him to get a bone marrow, and his body wasn't healthy enough for one when one was available. So it's kind of you kind of need both. You need a healthy body, and you need also the bone marrow to match. And we didn't get a match until late, when he was already a little too far along and his body couldn't accept it.
Okay.
So that's ultimately what happened.
Well, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, though, I do want to just kind of pick up from there and then talk about how your little brother Scott inspired you to do some really neat, big stuff. So, you guys, we'll be right back. Stick with us.
After the break,
everything was starting to fail, and he had an episode that put him into the ICU, and basically after that, he wasn't able to speak